So yes, I'm Alejandra and I'm a postdoc at TUM. And I think, yeah, you just described mostly what I have been doing so far. I have been working for around 12 years in different aspects of agroecology and agro-ecological systems. And currently I'm working mostly on wild bees. And to that point, I actually would like to start with a little icebreaker. I really like this interaction with the people that are on the other side of the screen. So if you could do me the favor and go to menti.com. And this is a website that allows you to do surveys and polls in live. And you enter this code 74690094. And the question is mostly, why are bees important to you? So just to get a picture of your background and in which direction you understand or see bees. It will be, it could be to you or it could be to the environment. What do you think bees are important for? And I will share my screen with you so that you can see the word crowd as it creates. Share the screen. I need to share the right screen now. Let's see. There you go. Okay, some people are actually doing the second quiz already. This would be, why are bees important to you? Now you can enter the question. You can enter up to 3 words in this question.
I think we maybe have the wrong code or the wrong link shared. I'm not sure.
Is it? No, I can see already some questions. You just need to enter again, maybe, and put the code again, and then you see the right first question of the quiz. Feed us, they pollinate, all creatures are beautiful. I wait 10 more seconds, perhaps, that people manage to get in. Is it working for you, Sebastian or Pavlov?
Yes, it is working.
Yeah. You can enter from your phone. There we have a few more words. Health, life, food. Okay, I like that health is coming up there. Someone needs, maybe you can raise your hand if you're having troubles. Otherwise, I wait 10 more seconds and then continue. Oh, that's nice. Great, pollination is the first thing that comes up. Happy. That one, it would be really nice that everyone can explain what their thing is happy, but it's great. Food production, feed us. So a lot related with food, but also related to health and some ecosystem integrity. So some all creatures are beautiful, some more intrinsic symbiosis. That's cool. Variety of species. So you can continue with that while I continue the talk. Now I go again back to sharing the screen, but you can continue entering until I move to the second question. That will be now. Stop sharing here and share my screen again. And there you go. So great, I see that you have a kind of extensive background on why are bees related to us and also what's the role of bees in the ecosystem. And from today's talk, I actually want to focus on 3 key messages for you to take home. One is that bee diversity is key to pollination services. The other is that bee diversity depends on diverse landscapes. And the last one is that we can do something to enhance pollination services. To the first message, Pollination services are within a bigger concept of ecosystem services that was born in the early 2000s as part of the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment. And this concept was used like to help highlight the critical role of ecosystems for human well-being and human health. And it was used as a tool for communicating to policy about the importance and relevance of funding conservation programs, as part of other things. But it was very useful to, in this way, to conceptualize ecosystems. And it was updated somehow with the framework of the IPBES that maybe some of you might be aware of. It's a really interesting and important international panel working on different aspects of ecosystem services. And it is also somehow within this now more complex concept that reflects better the complexity of the actual complexity of socio-ecological systems. Within the first framework, it was put somehow within the regulating services, and within the second one, within nature's benefits to people, and within also somehow within nature intrinsic values. However, it's worth noting that within both frameworks, when we are always talking about pollination services, they are quite a human-centered concept. So it's concepts that helps us identify and categorize different aspects of the environment that are functional to humans. And that's why for pollination in particular, we are usually referring to services in terms of crops. So we have papers that study and visualize pollination services in terms of quantity and quality of crops, for example, like this paper from Alex Klein that was trying to show what's the relative importance of animal pollinator pollination for leading crops for humans. Or we see papers that actually refer more to the contents of the crops in terms of the proportion of nutrients from the basic things that human needs, like vitamins, micronutrients, what's the proportion that actually comes from crops that depend on animal pollination. And thirdly, perhaps the one that maybe resonates more with policymakers is in terms of money. So how much would it cost, for example, to replace pollination if we wouldn't have animal pollinators anymore? And based on these studies and many others, we do know that around 75% of crops plants are pollinated by animals. So in this picture, we see some of the tasty ones and common ones that are dependent just on bee. So this is a very important argument within the whole discussion. However, it is worth noting that this argument is not bulletproof. And this is because from the main crops that are of relevance to humans, to people, there's quite a bit of redundancy in terms of the animals and the species that are pollinating them. So for example, in this paper by Klein et al. In 2015, they did this summary where their conclusion was that really this argument would fail in terms of protection, for example, of rare species that are less abundant of bees. They were focused on bees, and that there was quite a bit of redundancy, that a bunch of bee species would actually be potentially sufficient for supporting the main leading crops. So if we just stick with a concept of pollination services, human-oriented and kind of directly, perhaps this is not a great argument for supporting ecosystems in general. However, if we go a bit further and look in a more holistic way, we do know that about 88% of all flowering plant species are pollinated by animals. This goes beyond crops. And these are some of the pictures of wildflowers that are pollinated by bees. This is interesting because then if we see our pollination services, not just in terms of crops and in a more holistic way, we can also include these plants that are supporting perhaps other functions as well in the ecosystem, and that are actually contributing to the health of the bees, not only their abundance and their richness, but also the health and the condition in which they are. And definitely also supporting the food web resilience. So for example, against threats like climate change. And at the center of this topic, the star of the show are actually the animal pollinators. And in the literature, they are usually separated somehow into bee pollinators and non-bee pollinators. From bee pollinators, we can also subdivide between wild bees and the ones that are reared, which are also a handful of species that can be reared, but mostly the most well-known is honeybees. And then the non-bee pollinators like ants and beetles and birds. And in this talk, I do focus on bees because it's my area of research and they are very well studied, mostly also because honeybees are so important for our production. But that doesn't mean that non-bee pollinators aren't important. They are really important. In some cases, they are equally efficient or equally important for certain crops in certain conditions. So it's not that they are not important. And I wanted to also make this remark before really deeping into what is my interest, which is wild bees currently. We do know we're all mostly, I guess, familiar with one bee species, which was domesticated 10,000 years ago. And I mentioned it already, is the honeybee. This is, for example, a fresco in Egypt where they already were representing the relevance of honeybees for human culture. They were collecting the honey, wax, and propolis, and they were relating it with crops. And honeybees are really, I've also worked with honeybees and they are really, really interesting. There's so many aspects to study of this social community, of this social insect. But they are definitely not the only species of bees. There's about 20,000 species of bees around the world. There's a number that many people actually underestimate. Most of them are wild. They are worldwide, from the desert to tropical forests, so they are really present in ecosystems, in all ecosystems. And here we can see, for example, just the diversity within, in this graph is a phylogenetic tree, and they were trying to show what the response is to agriculture. And this is just the community of apple bees. So in an orchards, apple orchards of these bees, and you can see how diverse they are. So now going back to the quizzes, now you can go again to menti.com, and with the code, I will in a moment pass to the next question. I would like to know, so now you know that there's about 20,000 species of bees around the world. How many do you think there are in Germany, and how many, even just bumblebees, there are in Ukraine? So I share again the screen with you. There. I see there have been many more questions in the many more words in the meantime. So now you should be able to answer, how many species of bees do you think can be found in Germany? And we can see live your answers. 400. So if there's 20,000 in the whole world, maybe that helps you, or maybe that actually doesn't help you at all. 20. How many participants do we have actually? So I know more or less how to wait, if I should wait a bit. And 30 participants. 600. I wait at least until we have 15 answers or so out of it, like half of the people have answered. Okay, almost. Okay, that's interesting. Maybe people just tend to the second one. I will go to the second question now. Should I wait more?
I think that you can just proceed because in Ukraine we have unstable internet, so it's better
Maybe
not to
that
delay.
also helps. Yeah. So I go to the second one. And this one, there was already some answers. So some people think there's really 100 species of bumblebees in the Ukraine. Could be. Seven. Okay, that's interesting. So stop sharing the screen now, but you can continue answer this last question. Share my other screen. So to the answers, there's actually 600 species of bees in Germany. They are, as you can see, really diverse. They are diverse in size, in color. There's even one that is blue-violet, Silocopa. And this huge diversity of colors, colors and shapes, you can also see it in the bumblebees somehow, even just within one taxa within bees, you can also see a great diversity. And I also write down this paper from Konovalova in case someone wants to actually look for these bumblebees when you are in your fields or in your gardens even. So this wide diversity that we can see in colors and in shapes is part of why it's so interesting to study wild bees, but it's not the only thing. So they are actually highly efficient of pollination. Some of them can increase the yield of crops significantly, like for example, in alfalfa, when there's a bee that is specialized in one crop. They are also different. They also have different characteristics from honeybees. So some of them start flying earlier or end later. They can fly in a diversity of conditions, temperatures, even rain, and in different seasons because they have been solitary, most of them. They have a different life cycle. And they can specialize, as I said, in some native plants that may be of relevance to other functions of the ecosystem. More than that, they are in competition with each other for resources and with honeybees, which are somehow in disadvantage. That's a debate because we have so many honeybees, which also for research creates this very complex and amazing system of also pathogen sharing and resource competition. And many of them are threatened because they are sensible to different global change and land use change and fragmentation. So these are all reasons why to study bees. We have seen that there's a huge diversity in color and even visually. The key aspects that for research are interesting for within this diversity are perhaps, or defining this diversity, are perhaps nesting behavior and the diet needs of the different species. Most species of bees are actually ground nesters, and we are not really wired to think about bees as ecosystem engineers, but they actually are, because they are moving tons of soil per year to make their nests. But many others are pith nesters, wood nesters. This picture there at the bottom in the middle is actually a bee from Argentina that has adapted to use the poop from horses to make the nest, because there's so many horses and so much poop, and it has actually started using that element. There's also cavity nesters like honeybees, and there's freestanding nests. This represents the different areas of the landscape that where actually bees are present, more than in most people's head, just on the beehives. For my research, other than the diet, the nesting diversity, I'm interested in the diet needs of these bees. All bees, they need nectar and pollen, so a sugar source and a protein source. Nectar is really sugary water, and it can have different between plants. It can differ in the amount of sugar that it contains, but it mostly, composition is mostly similar. Whereas pollen, the proportion of the different elements of carbohydrates, protein, lipids, sterols, and minerals can actually differ significantly within plants. And that's something that is not completely studied. And what we're doing, one of the things that we're doing with our research is collect flowers. So from hundreds to thousands of flowers per species to collect sufficient amount of pollen to make different chemical analysis on the nutrients. And this is our professor, Sarah, and Sophie, one of our students. They did this brief analysis or preliminary analysis just on the fatty acid composition. In this graph, we can see the distance between the profiles of the different plants. And you can see there's a really wide diversity. They are not clustered all together, but there's a wide diversity of fatty acid composition in the pollen. This means that going to one flower and going to another one is not the same for these bees. They are not getting the same nutrients. So an interesting thing is whether these nutrients that they get correlate with what they actually need for being healthy. And part of this can be studied just by looking at where they are visiting. So there's bees that are really hardcore specialists, and they are visiting just one type of one plant or species or one related plant species, like for example, Chelostoma florisomne, that is only going to ranunculus, and others are really more generalist, like some bombus, like Bombus terrestris. Within these extremes, there's a range of preferences whether the bee can decide whether to go to one or more plants depending on the offer that it gets within a range of her own characteristics that allow it. So the main questions here would be which plants are being visited by which bees, and is this food preference changing when the landscape changes, for example, due to agricultural intensification? And we study this in 4 sites, 3 in Germany and 1 in Belgium. We have plots in each site that within a range of different plant diversity from low to high. And there we do some observation records, we catch the bees and we study the pollen, doing some genetic analysis to see where the bees were before we saw them. And this leads me to the second message of the talk, which is discussing a bit about the diversity of the landscape in relation to the bee diversity. This is a very preliminary analysis that we're doing, just analyzing now of trying to correlate or see if there's a correlation, better said, between the bee diversity, the species diversity, and the plant diversity in our plots. And these are the 4 sites per season that we have collected. And overall, you see in majorities of cases, there is a trend that is positive, that plant diversity correlates with bee diversity. The fit is very low in most cases. And this is because there's a really wide variety of explanatory variables that we need to analyze. So it's not just plant diversity that explains the whole bee diversity, but whereas still in the statistical models it has a significant effect. And there is definitely a trend that says that is positive. More interesting than that is the description of what we find that has not been completely explored before. So this is, for example, the bee plant network at low plant diversity fields. In our fields, there's about 105 species that we found and 97 plant species. And the thicker the interaction in the middle, the more abundant they are in the landscape. And you can see when we compare this with high plant diversity fields that the middle of the graph becomes more messy and more complex, and there's more interactions at high plant diversity fields. So with some indexes, we can say that networks are becoming more generalistic at higher flower offers. So the bees, whenever they do have the offer, they actually profit from it in general, not species specific, of course. This is an analysis that we have to do next. But what this could mean in terms of health is that at higher plant diversity, they have more access to diverse nutrients. And potentially in case of threats like fragmentation or climate change that threaten one or a few species of plants, the nutrients that are critical for the bees there's higher chances that they are redundant and they don't get lost. And this is a bit what I wanted to show you from my research and what I wanted to show in terms of describing the diversity of pollination services in the landscape. And now to the last part of the talk, that we can do something to enhance pollination services. I actually would like to, I was screening through the profiles of the people that are in the talk, and I actually wanted to more learn from each other what you are actually already doing or what you would like to implement to enhance wild bees. It could be also pollination in general, but perhaps in this case, maybe just to focus on the last 10 minutes, like to focus on nesting diversity, on diet diversity, on policy practices and other practices that you might consider important for pollination in general. This relates a bit with the first question, like what is pollination or what is bees for you? And so to do that and work together, there's this other tool that is miro.com. I hope the people in Ukraine can actually access it. And otherwise, at least there should be one person per breakup group that can access this tool, and then you can actually write down. And we would go into 4 breakout groups for each of these areas: nesting sites, diet diversity, policy, and others. And the idea is to develop perhaps 3 to 5 recommendations of things that you are currently doing or want to implement, and then come back to the main room for a wrap up on pollination. Is this fine for everyone? I think we could make the breakout groups now. Stop sharing, come back to the main screen. Sebastian, can you make the breakup groups or should I make them?
Yes, I will open them.
Thank you. I will briefly pop into each of them. I think I can still see the previous breakout groups that are in progress. But...
Alejandra, I have to excuse, we have to use these breakout rooms, unfortunately, because they are preset and
okay.
I cannot change them anymore. I'm sorry.
We could...
Is it possible that we just use the 2 rooms that the people are joining already for our task?
I wonder if we can perhaps do it here in the main room.
Okay, then we
because
just,
of the amount of people, I think, because I think there's only 7 people that are entering and they are already writing stuff.
Okay.
So maybe everyone contributes.
Then I just closed the breakout rooms. I'm sorry very much, but I cannot change them because they were preset when we started
But I think based on the number, or at least people are writing, maybe breakup groups are not needed. They are writing stuff already, and then we
Okay,
just
great. Then I
focus.
just close them and that they come back.
Should we do perhaps 10 minutes of this that people write down? So until 11:24 or something like this?
The next presentation from Julia starts at 11:25.
Yeah. So maybe until 20, and then we do
that would be
4 minutes, 5 minutes.
Well, we will need to do a Q&A session too, so we need to account that there's enough time.
Yes. Yeah, I think the Q&A could be within the wrap-up. It's really, that's the last slide. Thank you.
Has the time for breakout rooms finished? Because I was...
The breakout rooms apparently are not possible. So maybe we just all write down the ideas there. And if you want to talk in the meantime here in the main room, that's also okay. If you want to discuss different things of the different diversities. I see there's a lot of people writing on nesting improvements. And maintenance. So someone asked me to refresh the board, and I just did that. But I think this is something that you should do, each person should do in their own screen. Just go to the link every now and then you can see all the participants. Yeah, you can also, like Senya did, you can also write it down there in the chat, and I can go to the board and do it write it down in the board. Most people might have noticed, but if you zoom in with your mouse, then that makes it easier to write down. Plant a pollinator-friendly garden. Messy private gardens. That's nice. Do 3 more minutes, and then we do the Q&A wrap up. Throw seed bombs with flower seeds. I'm writing yours, Xenia. Great, so it's 11:20. You can continue writing because this is also very helpful for me to do the wrap up maybe and send the conclusions later. And I will then copy the ones that are being written in the chat. Well, share my screen for the wrap up slide. I think a lot of the new sharing. A lot of the things that you have been writing can be actually summarized in a few of these things, like plant native flowers, keep undisturbed nesting sites or add nesting sites, know where your food is actually coming from. That's one that I didn't see around there, but within the policies or within the Vote and Act or the other practices. And whenever, of course, it's safe, vote and act whenever it's safe and possible for you to do it. And this is kind of like the wrap-up slide. Then since these slides are being shared with you, I added some links to papers that might be helpful. And if you cannot access them, just drop me an email and I will send you the PDF for them for people that want to learn more. Just yesterday, we received this email on funding opportunities between some universities in Europe, like TUM, where I am and Monica is, and Ukraine University. So if you would like to collaborate further, just enter this link to see if you would be suitable, eligible, and also let's perhaps network tomorrow in the extra hour that you guys just won this morning for networking. And with that, I just want to say thank you and maybe answer your questions and go back to perhaps the last task if someone wants to discuss it further.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alejandra.
Thank
that
you.
was an interesting interactive lecture that we had today. We have a first question from YouTube right now. It says, is it true that the presence of osmiums on the colony site will inevitably lead to the destruction of honeybees kept in a frame hive?
I could imagine that they mean osmia in general, bees. So osmia bicornis and different species of osmia that are solitary bees that nest in reeds. I haven't read any paper where it was saying that it was leading to the destruction of honeybees, and I have never heard of that in any of my research. It could be, I don't know where this is coming from, so it could be that in some situation the competition was so strong and the honeybees were weak for whatever reason, and they were competing for flowers. I wouldn't know of any case where this is true. Does someone in the audience know where this is coming from? If there's specific situation where this has happened, or
if anyone in the audience, if you know anything about this, just feel free to turn on your mic and tell us something about that. Otherwise, also feel free to ask more questions on the chat or in the spreadsheet that Pablo shared earlier.
Yeah, but in general, just to wrap up with that, I have not heard of this. Of course, as I said, wild bees, honeybees, they are competing for flowers. Not all of the species are competing for the same flower, but it's good to know the species that are in your landscape. And in any case, balance the kind of services that your field or your garden is producing. So within the honeybee and the rest of the stuff, but definitely I would say it's the other way around, that the competition is so strong from honeybee that wild bees don't have or have a reduced space and resources.